Hello, and welcome to the Holistic Fitness Podcast, where you'll learn how to get your goals without burning out. I'm your host, Laurie, and this show isn't just about movement and nutrition. You probably already know that exercise and nutrition is important for your mental and physical health and well-being. It's also about stress management, mindset, shedding those limiting beliefs, and working through some of that childhood trauma while you're at it. Today, I'm joined by Tripp. Tony Tripp Parks is a certified personal trainer, nutritionist, genetic-based program design, and strength and conditioning specialist. He's also an author, podcast host, and has over a decade of experience in the health and wellness industry. He's the former owner of the Protein Bar and a former cornerback for Professional Football League. Tripp specializes in science-based fitness results with a particular focus on genetics. His expertise lies in designing customized programs based on an individual's genetic makeup to maximize results. Tripp uses a combination of science, experience, and discipline to help his clients reach their fitness and wellness goals. So whether you're a seasoned athlete or have never set foot in a gym, Tripp has all of the skills and expertise to help you and your goals and stay wherever you want to be. Tripp, it's awesome to have you on tonight.
Thank you so much. I enjoy being here.
I'm so excited. Like, as I mentioned before we jumped on here, to just hear this perspective of genetics. I don't think I've ever had anyone on the podcast that's like really made that their specialty. I think we kind of like say, oh yeah, genetics are important, but don't really dive into it. I feel like it's super niche though. So could you dive into why and how you got here? Like, why do you help people in this very specific way?
Yeah. So, I started going to the gym when I was 12. My brother and I are 18 years apart. We had pretty much nothing in common besides that. And it just turned into a love. I started programming at 15, was our unofficial health chair in the fraternity when I was in college. And, fast forward a little bit to last year, my mom had a stroke and it turned to vascular dementia. So I had to move from Denver back home to North Carolina. And it was rough. She had trouble swallowing. She had memory loss. She would soil herself, and I had to come back home, take care of her, put on a regimen, make sure that she was losing weight to get her off the statins. And, where our door closes or opportunity. So I took the time where my mom would be napping or she would be fixated on a coloring book or something like that. I would start writing what would now become health profiling. I would take classes. I would just try to keep myself mentally engaged as much as possible, or I would go crazy. But doing all that, getting certified in personal training during that time, nutrition, everything that you listed off there. I told you I applied over from the Czech Republic to California, and Denver is the one that chose me back. It's just kind of crazy that way, but
such a synchronicity.
It is. It's
yeah.
So weird. Like driving back in that day, like coming back, I was like, I'm back. Like I never thought I'd come back.
That's wild.
But my now business partner hired me. He worked as a GM at a one-on-one personal training studio here in Denver. And we knew that there was stuff missing. There was nutrition programs they'd try to roll out. They weren't working. There was frustration with the clients because we were only attacking it from one perspective. So we decided to join forces and create what is now Ascend Performance Training. And during that time, we were trying to come up with our niche, trying to come up with this way that we were going to help people differently. And going through the book and talking to my business partner, Brett, we came up with health profiling, which is looking at it in an entire perspective. And at the nucleus of that is genetics, right? Like, like I said before, if you go to a personal trainer for a wellness problem, they're going to write you a workout. You go to a dietitian, a diet, but no one's putting it all together and answering why. And genetics are that reason, I believe. It's proven science. The genetics have been around for quite a while now, and we're seeing some amazing results with our clients, as well as removing frustrations. So it's been a kind of a crazy experience of how we got here. It just kind of fell into our laps, really,
Yeah, for sure. No, that's what a journey. And I'm really sorry to hear about your mom as well, because that would have been a really challenging journey. Can you catch me up to date on, like, during that moment of your life, why was it important for you to start studying health more seriously? Because I'm just not putting two and two together there. So
when I saw her in that hospital bed, the way she was, now she was a smoker. She did not eat right. I begged her to quit the cigarettes. She considered Stouffer's a meal. So she was severely unhealthy, and I tried my best to get her healthy. And I was like sitting there, doing these tests and trying to educate myself a little bit because I wanted to understand more what was going on with her and understand how I could prevent that for someone else. I was like, this ruins your family.
Yeah.
Completely. It like kind of cross trajectory my career. No one should ever see your parents like that.
100%.
So it was like a motivating tool for me to understand the process and understand, maybe she was genetically predisposed for something. And if she would have had a piece of paper saying that she had an 80% increased chance for a stroke, maybe I could have gotten her off the cigarettes. And that's kind of where that came from.
No, that makes total sense. My mum actually only just quit cigarettes like 2 years ago, like when she was 49 or 51, I can't remember, but it's wild because I think there's a lot of things that we know are quote unquote bad for us, like smoking, excess alcohol, super sugary foods, but it's really, really hard to stop. You alluded to, though, that you thought that if there's more like genetic information out there, that may be more of a motivation. Why do you think that?
It's a lot from the reaction of my clients and just the belief in the science, right? I'll give you a great example. Back in February, I got a genetic test back, and part of my older genetic test had just a very generalized obesity report, right? And she had the top rank for propensity for obesity, and she was overweight severely. And she started crying, and I was like, well, what's going on? She's like, everyone's told me to do this and this and that to get healthy. And I've told everybody I've been different my whole life, and this proves it.
Wow.
Right. It's like we're all uniquely beautiful, and our programming should be as such as well,
Yeah. What do you do with information like that? So if somebody is coming to you for health and fitness advice and they have that validation or that quote unquote excuse to be overweight or obese, how do you ensure somebody is healthy even if they are overweight or obese? Like, can somebody still be healthy when they're overweight or obese? Like, I'm just really trying to put two and two together there again.
So it really depends. So genetics are just one tool in our tool belt, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing blood work as well, right? We're doing hormone panels, metabolics, lipids. We're doing everything too. And we want to make sure like your HDLs, your LDLs, we want to make sure your cholesterol, your fats are good. And that way we can cross-reference it with your genetics and figure out exactly where you are.
Right. I love that. Yeah.
Right. So it's just, again, I think that's why genetics haven't worked in the past, is because no one's putting it together with other qualified methods. Like, hey, let's do a biomechanical assessment, see how your body moves. If you've got let's say you've got 5 different alleles or indicators that say that your Achilles and your ACL might rupture. It's like, this might happen here. So let I see in the biomechanical assessment, you got some roughness in your knee. I see 5 predispositions here. It's like, this might be an accident waiting to happen.
Right.
Right. So we use different measurements to make sure that we're hitting our goals. And I think that just genetics by themselves aren't the answer.
That makes total sense, because it frustrates me when people use genetics as a scapegoat or use genetics as an excuse. But if you are overweight, all of your labs are good, you feel good within your body, you eat well most of the time, you move often, then I think there can be health at any size. But when you use genetics as an excuse, I think that's where it can get kind of dangerous, because genetics is one thing, but having a lifestyle that supports your health is important at any size or any genetics, in my opinion. I think now is probably a good time to get into health profiling, though, because you mentioned a few other things, and I kind of just like jumped on the genetics. So can you explain to me what exactly health profiling is? Like, what sort of stuff do you look into?
So health profiling is more of just a perspective change for all of us to take, right? Like, let's go ahead and take a step back. Let's look at what health is for what it is. We're living in a health epidemic of epic proportions that no one seems to care about in America, because I don't think they can see. Right? We grew up the food pyramid, and that fucker was upside down.
Yeah.
Right.
All the carbs, all of the simple sugars.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we had the same food pyramid in Australia, so it's not just America. It was upside down for us. So if that's validation for you, there you go.
Well, and again, it's just the science wasn't there. I think that, there was corporations coming in and telling them, hey, put Kellogg's at the top there. But I also don't think they had the science, right? And,
Mm.
Even 20 years ago, we were so heavily on calorie focus, and now we're more focused on macros. And, it's like we're getting more and more defined, and health profiling is a way for us to see it more clearly just from the average eye, not being a trainer, not being not being a pro athlete, and just trying to inform people the truths about health and wellness, right? Like, hey, let's talk about sleep. How does that impact what you're doing? How can we get on a better sleep cycle? Let's talk about habits, right? How do you form a good habit? And all these things are quantitative and tangible, intangible ways that we can get healthy and fit. Just cutting out all the BS,
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Why is sleep important?
Well, sleep, I can control everything from hormone imbalances, your energy levels, your alertness, organ functions. There's some extreme studies out there. If you even lose like 4 hours of sleep during your normal sleep cycle during a week, you could have some serious repercussions. Your immune system tanks when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And it's all really about balance, right? Like, how can I balance, right? Like, hey, listen, I got kids, I can get a solid 6 hours, but I need to plan that out. So putting on a regimen is really important, right? We want to match up with circadian rhythm. And again, that's just all stuff that we're not talking about. Like you said, just little bits and pieces, but we need to talk about it as a whole, because it's a whole for us, right?
Yeah, for sure. I must say, I have a Whoop, and the Whoop like tracks your sleep time variability. So your wake time variability and your like when you go to sleep time variability. And it also tracks like things that impact your recovery. And the things that impact my recovery the most, randomly, having a period is really good for my recovery, probably because I do less, but it like gives me 11% better recovery. I'm like, how? I always feel like shit. Anyways, the other thing that's really, really high up there, of course, getting like 95% effective sleep, but the wake time variability is really strong up there, and also the sleep time variability. If I have a high variability, my recovery is really, really bad. So, of course, alcohol is the worst thing, and this is just data for my own body. But I found that, that variability metric quite interesting.
Did that change the way that you started doing things, knowing that data?
Yes, it does change the way I'm doing things, especially with alcohol. So I do enjoy alcohol every now and again, but now I'd much prefer to stop earlier. And I always go home. Not that I'm a massive party animal, but, I don't have children, and I do go out every now and again. Like, I always want to leave by 11 p.m. for that reason. So that is probably something that's changed. And what else has changed? Probably not much more, because I've personally always been a good sleeper. The reason I asked you about sleep is because I'm personally very passionate about it. So it was a bit of a self-serving question.
Well, like things like cortisol levels can be shot up too. And that's just the bad drug with that. We don't want any of that, we, especially with all the blue light and stuff that we go through every day. Like these aren't real glasses. They're just blue blockers.
Blue light ones. Love that. I need to wear mine more often and track it on my Whoop.
Yeah. See, there you go. Keep that data going,
Yeah, for sure.
But we're always being bombarded by announcements. We're getting false information on social media about health and wellness. The news is telling us one thing or the other, and there's not a lot of places to go. And that's why I hope, health profiling, I hope gets bigger and has more information in it as it goes along. But that's why, things like sleep are so important. And if you go to a personal trainer, they're probably not going to talk about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it depends on what type of personal trainer you're getting as well. Like, some are super thorough, and, especially the ones that have been on this podcast, they're incredible. But I think just your stock standard, like both you and I have been through CPT training. You don't learn any of this stuff. You don't learn about water quality. You don't learn about sleep that much. You learn the endocrine system on a real basic level, but it's kind of easy to become a personal trainer. You know how to train someone's body, but everything else needs to be self-study.
It's really regurgitated physical education class from high school.
Yeah.
For CPT, and like you said, like the endocrine system, they touch on it, but they don't teach you what its use is and how to talk to someone about it. And I'm hoping more people out there with, CPTs, they get more than one certificate.
Definitely.
Keep on learning, because, the science is evolving with everything, genetics. Like, we only know like 3% of the human genome.
Mm.
it's enough of that genetics where I can make a huge impact on people's lives.
Yeah,
You
for
know, and
sure.
that's the future. Qualitative science is and preventative health is the future of wellness.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Something I want you to dive into more is
Yeah.
you said false information on social media. Big pet peeve of mine. So I quite like posting on TikTok. Big pet peeve is me posting like general information like, oh, don't run if you have more cortisol or high stress job or
Yeah.
and then like really personalizing it. And it's, in my opinion, it's kind of like, this is still general information, but then sometimes I see other people's content and it's super specific information for like a segment of the population. And then people are kind of like, I'm convinced I'm ADHD now after looking at reels. Like, so I don't know. When you said false information on social media, that I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's like, I feel like people use it as a platform to maybe not just spill information, but maybe an agenda too, right? And what I mean is the same reason why I left corporate wellness is because people are units and not numbers. A lot of social media is sales based. The people that are putting like generalized good information out, I love that, you know. But for every good general piece of information, there's one or two bad ones that's telling somebody the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, do keto. It's like, well, like, does your blood work look good? Or you know, if your LDLs are bad, I'm not going to suggest you doing a keto diet. Like,
yeah,
means like, I know there's scientific studies, but I don't know your genetics based off your blood work. And if I don't have that information, then I can't help you out. I just don't think there's a one size fits all a shoe for fitness and wellness. And you see so much of that online nowadays.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel as though like what's most encapsulating on social media is like a really solid, like you need to know this hook. And the really good marketers are often the ones that, that kind of get a lot of traction on social media, and not all the information is right. But I come from quite a poor upbringing. So I know that most of the people I know growing up would not have the money to get individualized information. So how would you suggest folks that are maybe listening to this podcast to get free information and won't end up buying programs, how would you suggest they go about getting curious?
So I have a podcast as well. It's called Health or High Water. We dive extremely deep into the genetics, injury predispositions, how you're affected with sleep. You go into all that. We also have a blog as well. Performancetraining.com/blog. We the reason we've been so successful is because our value proposition is based off education.
I love that.
Right. It's like, hey, like, listen, we're going to give you all the information. If you want to work with us, that is awesome. But everything's free. You can check it out. We do free programs for people too, especially people that are, you know, not well off. It's like, hey, I've got templates all over the place. It's like, hey, it might not be individualized, but it's something to get you started. So if anyone ever did want a free program, they can more than happy email me at trippsnpt@gmail.com. But we don't want to like withhold information from anything, you know, like, hey, like, let's put it out there. And that's what seems to work with us too, is just starting these conversations and, you know, the podcast, the blog, just running on LinkedIn, messaging people, hey, would you have time for conversation, and just try to educate each other.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. And I think that would be like my suggestion for anyone listening. I mean, you're already probably ahead by listening to a podcast rather than scrolling on Reels. But to be honest, is to do your research on the people that are providing the information. Because there's some really great creators out there that provide excellent information. And I think that's one of the markers for me is like, are they sharing long form content as well on YouTube, on a podcast, on, you know, a blog, and what's the quality of that? Does it link out to studies? And that's kind of how I verify the information I'm getting on social media, because I don't think it's all bad, but sometimes I do think it's a little bit surface level.
Yeah, I wouldn't say bad. I say it's distorted.
Yeah, that's a really good. Yeah. I'm words are hard sometimes for me. I love it. I love it when I have guests that just bring the words that I wanted in my mouth. Tell me more about the genetics testing though. You said that there was 3% of the genome that we have access to, but that's like more than enough information. And you've also kind of referred to a few studies. So I'd love for you to dive into what you know and kind of the basis for your work.
Yeah, sure. So I've used several different genetic testing companies down the road. And the one I'm using right now, we partnered up with a company called Gene Planet.
Great.
And I have tons of different PhD certified geneticists on staff. We chose this company for pretty much three reasons. The first one is privacy policy security.
Right.
Companies like 23andMe and
Oh,
Ancestry,
don't tell me this. I've done it.
they can own your genetic rights.
Oh my goodness. What does that mean?
They could like make a kidney from your DNA if they wanted to, or what have you. So
Wow.
we make sure that we go out of the EU because they can't do that over there.
Wow.
The second reason was they have updated genetic information on their app that all your tests comes from, right? So if the Mayo Clinic comes out with a hey, FB5045 is directly correlated with thyroid disease, you'll get updated immediately with that because it's a progressive science.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then third was just the quality of the test, because like you said about, qualitative research, like, hey, what studies are being done? The reason you're finding misconceptions in different tests, like different testing companies, is because of their quality of the research that are backing with it. And Gene Planet uses peer-reviewed studies that are person-driven, right? Like some companies are using ones about rats and lab rice mice, and that's why you're getting fallacies in certain tests. Like one test will pop up this, one test will pop up differently. So that's where it kind of starts. Like we wanted to make sure that all of our clients are getting the top of the line and they're secured. So it starts there with the quality of the test, right? And with that test, it comes into three different sections: my lifestyle, my wellness, and my ancestry. So with my wellness, it comes into certain things like, hey, our genetic predispositions for let's say diet, for example. We say, hey, your propensity for vitamin D metabolism is extremely low. I see that your blood work came back as not optimal. It's in the green. It's not optimal. But I'm also seeing on your skin and your skincare health here that you got a high propensity for melanoma and sunspots. So when we're getting the vitamin D that you need, we should not be getting it from the sun, but why don't we get it from vitamin D rich foods and supplements? Right. So we're able to, again, go back to that cross-referencing thing, our blood work with the genetics, where we start with the genetic test, but we cross-reference back with it. Right.
Wow. That's super cool. So you're getting the genetic test, but that vitamin D thing, would you get that from the blood work or do you get that from the genetic test? Because usually it's lab work that gives you that, right?
Both. So with the genetic test, it would be your propensity to be able to metabolize vitamin D.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And then you cross-reference with the blood work. Right. So that way we're in real time. We're like, all right. So I had a client that was taking vitamin D. She had a low metabolism for vitamin D, and this is straight from someone else or someone's test is like, it wasn't optimal, but I didn't want her, she was 88. So I didn't want her going out in the sun and getting vitamin D with, A, her being high risk at being older, and B, having several alleles indicating that she could have sunspots and melanoma. So we're able to target a lot easier about how to increase these quality of life without, with reducing the risk of damage.
Are you tired of constantly feeling burnt out while trying to achieve your goals? Do you find yourself struggling to maintain motivation and productivity over long periods of time? I'd like to introduce you to the Goal Getting Journal, the ultimate solution for those of you who want to surpass their goals without burning out. Our journal is designed to help you set achievable goals, track your progress, and maintain a healthy work-life balance. With our journal, you'll discover practical strategies for managing stress, staying motivated, and avoiding burnout, including time blocking, habit stacking, and so much more. You'll also learn how to prioritize your tasks and maximize your productivity so you can get more done in less time. The Goal Getting Journal is perfect for anyone who wants to achieve their goals without sacrificing their mental health and well-being. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, or just someone who wants to make any positive change in your life, the Goal Getting Journal can help you stay on track and avoid burnout. And for Holistic Fitness podcast listeners, you can get 20% off your first journal using the code HFPodcast. Go to goalgettingjournal.com and type HF podcast at checkout to get your discount. So what are you waiting for? Order the Goal Getting Journal today and start getting your goals without burning out.
That's awesome. I love that. I definitely want to check out Gene Planet because it sounds like it did a lot more than 23andMe. I loved 23andMe, by the way. Thought it was awesome, but I knew that it was like just your kind of taster of gene stuff. We actually, funny story, but I do have actual questions for you. Not funny story. My grandmother found out that her dad wasn't her real dad through 23andMe.
Really?
So yeah, so we're actually this explains where the brown eyes come from and how I tan easily. Like I think I'm like 1/5 Spanish, or whatever that is, 20% Spanish, which is why I went ahead and did mine. So I find that really interesting with the gene stuff. So that's why we all went and did it. But I actually found all of in 23andMe, I'm not sure how accurate it is. Like it said that like waking up at 8 a.m. was my ideal time. And I'm like, oh, you speak to me.
Yeah, you can totally find out if you're night owl biased, if you're morning biased, if you're in between bias. You can figure out everything. It even goes into depths of like, let's talk about the wellness portion, right?
Yeah.
I can figure out your immune system predispositions, malaria, COVID, your HIV probability.
Wow.
Then we get into things like cardiovascular risks. What's your AFib? What's your percent for that? What's your stroke percentage? And as well as we get into, this is a hard one to talk about, but cancers. What's your percentage for prostate cancer? What's your percentage for basal cell skin cancer? Right. And, knowing all that, if we can figure out ahead of time, and that's why I really want to get into screening for youth sports. Imagine being able to test these kids and like catching something early.
Yeah.
Whether it be an injury predisposition, something to do with their heart, or even, God forbid it being cancer.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, just, that's what kind of where health profiling mixed with this genetics. It's like, hey, like we want a better process for us to be healthy. Yeah.
And you want to impact the next generation as well, because we should always be helping the next generation get better. I'll get to the youth sports shortly, but I'm just curious with the genetic testing and all the markers, are there any like your top 3 or things that you see time and time again that people are needing to focus on, or even in lab work?
One I'm finding a lot, and especially in women, it's a genetic allele called RS12678919, and it's a fat burning variant.
Wow.
Right.
So it makes your body like more thermogenetic.
Pretty much. Yeah. But if you don't have it, you can technically break the second law of thermodynamics.
Okay.
Right. So a great example here. I've had several ladies with this, this variant missing, and a person missing this variant could do, let's say, 6 hours of a bike versus someone who does have it 1 hour and not have the same fat loss by any means.
So it affects calorie burned.
And fat loss, right? Yeah, everything.
Yeah, and expenditure. Wow.
Right. So it's like, all right, well, how do I go about, helping this person lose fat? I mean, we're already optimizing her diet. We're already optimizing her supplementation. We're, making sure she's getting good sleep. But as a workout, as a personal trainer, what can I do? It's like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we're going to do some plyometric work, right? We're going to try to mimic that cardio-like aspect while doing some kind of strength training, and we're going to do some circuit training, right? We're going to increase the reps. We're going to shorten the set time and try to, again, mimic the cardio-like aspect of it, but work in a strength position so she or he can burn that fat. But without knowing that fat burning variant's missing, you could just be sitting there working at a gym and be like, why am I not getting to where I want to be?
Right. So with this variant, why is high reps and, plyometrics, so more power, more helpful than spending more time on a bike or steady state cardio?
It's because if we're just talking about fat loss here, just from that perspective, that again, this person hypothetically could do a bike for 7 hours and not lose fat. So when we're talking about, all of our lives are so crazy, we have to really be effective with our workouts too, right? Like, hey, most of us have like 45 minutes to get our workout in. So as looking at that, it's like, hey, like I'm not going to program much cardio into this if fat loss is your goal, right?
Yeah.
We're going to start with strength training, plyometrics, and we're going to mimic that to make sure that your cardio is good, to make sure your heart's good. But we're also going to lose that fat and try to build that lean mass and try to trick your body. And again, it's like us just figuring out how to work around these predispositions, right?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you're just like, how can I get the most bang for my buck in this 45 minutes, knowing also everything I know about her health? I have one more question, and it's in terms of what you were saying sounds really balanced. If you were to think of like a balanced approach to fitness, like a framework, if you will, movement specifically, some people like yoga, some people like running, some people like the gym. What things do people need to make sure they incorporate in their movement to ensure that it's balanced?
I think Health is a lot like wealth. And what I mean is, when we diversify our wealth portfolios, we're not putting all of our money in one basket.
Mm.
Right. So we want to look at, health as well. So we look at our health profiles or portfolios, however you want to put it, is we should be diversifying it as much as possible. With movement. Hey, like if you're a gym hog going 5 days a week, I'm gonna be like, hey, let's take one of those days off and do some yoga. Let's take maybe one of those days off and do some intramural flag football or something like that. You're right. It really is just about balance.
Mm.
Everything is about balance, getting, balanced sleep, balanced work and play, balancing, your recovery with your workouts. And that's why, these genetics are so important, because it's the fulcrum, right? It's the fulcrum to make sure we can balance everything.
For sure. No, definitely. I'm really big on like finding movement that challenges you cardiovascularly, resistance, mobility, and then agility. And agility can also be plyometrics. Like you could get all of this done in the gym, but if I was to give someone a framework and it's like, okay, so you're doing power vinyasa in yoga, but like, are you really getting into that anaerobic heart rate zone? Right. Are you really doing some agility work? And I'm a yoga teacher, so I love yoga as well. Like I'm educated in yoga and in fitness. And I think the same with running. Like if you only run and there's no hybrid training approach, after a while, like, yes, it's going to challenge your muscles to begin with, but then after a while, like, are you really like challenging your mobility and challenging your strength? And I just think balance is so important.
I couldn't agree more. And you what I try to do really is like go back to the days before gyms, talk about cave people days, straight up like paleo diets of just they picked, they ate, and what were they doing athletically? They were not high endurance sprinters. They would shoot an arrow and then they would jog, a few feet and then get their food. They weren't, unless they're running away from a lion or something, right? Like, right. But they were picking up their kids, they were carrying their kids around. There was resistance training there. They were swimming, right? So all these different aspects. And that's why, I agree with this balance thing and diversifying our health portfolio, because our ancestors were doing different things. Like you said, agility, resistance. There's all these factors that make us human. And I think just doing one thing is ignoring who we are.
Exactly. And something else I think we forget is that we rested a lot more than what we do now. And we were in our parasympathetic nervous system. So I rest and digest so much more than what we are now as well. And we kind of like, my big thing or catchphrase for both the Goal Getting Journal I sell and this podcast is get your goals without burning out. And we're just so burnt out because we're always thinking about the next thing we have to do, but we never let ourselves like be a human being, like, and just be.
Right. And it's like that small decision fatigue at the end of the day too, right?
Right. Yes.
And understanding, like, that's why regiment for us is so important. And like in the health profiling book and the comprehensive wellness profile we do with the genetic test, it's like, what's the most practical thing here in getting people on a regiment? Right. That's how you create good habits. That's how you create discipline. And that's how all these things start to fit together and work. Right.
We're going to dive into regimen later about like all of that sort of stuff, but I don't want to forget about the youth sports and the work. I think it's really awesome that you're wanting to make the next generation even better. So tell me more about your passion there and what you're hoping to achieve or are already achieving.
So the biggest thing is the loss of community and ethics that we are seeing right now in these sports. Some people don't even have a football program. Some people don't have cheerleading. Some schools are just lacking, arts and music and all over the place. And I believe that us people need to stand up, because there's not a lot of places that kids can go ethically and communally to learn how to be a better person, learn how to, hey, I need to learn how to push myself, right? I need to learn how to be a teammate. I need to learn how to be a better sibling. I need to learn how to be a better son, a daughter, right? And I know us losing that's gonna really negatively affect us, and I think it already has. COVID was already bad enough for kids, and then them coming out of school to find that their programs have been slashed.
That's wild. Why are they being slashed, and what are they being like? I've not heard about this. I don't know. Art, sports, that just seems like. And I went to like a public school, like it was not fancy. It was a sports school, but yeah, what are they replacing it with, and why are they slashing it?
I don't think they're replacing with anything. They're just not having. Yeah.
Is it funding?
I'm pretty sure it's funding. I had a guy on my podcast, Lance Veneria, and he's a head school or a high school head football coach here in Denver. And just the quality of time these kids get in sports is just not there, and their love for the sport's not there anymore. And, you also add parents, harping down on kids. You add, a high rate of youth injuries, right? And it culminates to, kids not wanting to do anymore. And
Yeah.
Again, they get burnt out from the parents. Programs are getting burnt out. Parents can't afford after school programs, or the school doesn't have it. So participation just plummets.
How much onus do you think is on the parents versus the schools?
I don't know.
You can share your opinion. I feel like this isn't an answer backed in data.
This is not backed in any sort of data whatsoever. I do see a lot of parents taking it too far.
Right.
Way too far. I think that they're trying to live their dream through their child, and it's sad. It should be about the children first. What's best for them, right? What's best for them, and this new genetic screening process gives us an opportunity to give them a better chance at not only picking the right sport for them. Like maybe their endurance predisposition is bad. Maybe swimming's not good for them, or it might not be best for them. Maybe they got a high predisposition for ACL rupture. Maybe if before he tries out, or he or she tries out for football, we do some pliability work, we do some flexibility work, you get you in recovery. And I know that knowing this qualitative information going in, especially when you're adding the cancer, cardiovascular risk stuff, is going to give a higher quality to the children, as well as hopefully create a better community of kids wanting to participate. Like, hey, they're actually caring about us. Right. So that's where I kind of see it, and how I want to, positively affect this crisis that we got going on.
Yeah, for sure. As a child who grew up in technically under what the US calls poverty line, I just think it's so unfair that families with money can get access to this. And I think people don't realize how much money really can change things, whether it being getting a really good tennis coach, access to genetic information, just osmosis from your parents watching them make financial decisions, or not seeing a parent stress out about having to pay their rent on time and stuff like this. And I don't know, I would love to see a world where genetics testing was subsidized through health insurance and stuff like that, because I feel as though everyone should have access to this for their children to make better decisions.
I couldn't agree more. And we're actively trying to take those steps right now.
I love that. Tell me more.
So I was listening to a podcast one day, and this is kind of we had me and my business partner, we put all this together. We're all excited. It's well, what's next here? It's cost is going to be a huge factor. It's not everyone's going to be able to afford this. What do we do? It's well, let's make someone else pay for it.
Yes.
Right?
How do we get health insurance to pay for it? And hopefully the health insurance plans are good enough to pay for it.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, we already have a structure for this based off of some EU models. And I'm not sure if they've applied this yet, but they're doing something called a health score, which is very similar to a credit score, right? It's based off of your health. And what it's going to do is going to give insurance companies and people more of an advantage about picking their packages. Right. So a premium for someone, let's say, that does blood work and they can prove they go to the gym 4 times a week, they eat at healthy places and can prove it, is going to end up paying a lower premium.
That's awesome.
Than someone who, right. And it's not adapted to America yet, but we started to think all right, well, how can we start doing this now? So we're reaching out to companies, and we're willing to talk to their insurance providers. Hey, listen, if we do, all our genetic tests for this company, we come up with programs, would you lower the premiums? And I don't see why not. They're going to end up paying less. Well, yeah, we're getting qualitative information, and we're of course we're going to charge less for, unless our entire staff is completely unhealthy. Yeah. But I want to use this as a way to give a leg up for us too. Down the road, I don't see why insurance companies wouldn't buy into this. It makes way too much sense. Yes. And, it would stop punishing the healthy people for their high insurance claims.
100%. I'm very cynical about this. Here's my cynical opinion. I think there's not enough on preventative medicine yet in like health insurance plans and stuff like that, because this is a very cynical opinion, because if we're well, there's nothing to sell to us. Hey, Holistic Fitness fam, a quick message from one of our sponsors, Ned. As you all know, I recommend good nutrition, movement, and stress management practices before supplementing, so you know what type of supplementation that your body actually needs. For me, I supplement with very few products, but Ned is one of them. I'm a type A, high energy, ambitious business girly with massive goals. And sometimes I honestly just need to chill out and relax a bit. I've found that both Ned's de-stress and sleep blends fit in with my busy lifestyle and ambitious goals, but I was honestly not a big fan of CBD products before trying Ned, mostly because of the culture surrounding weed. I just didn't want something that was going to alter my state of mind so that I became much less of a goal-getter or less ambitious. That was until I learned about full spectrum hemp and their benefits. Ned blends are chock full of premium CBD and a full spectrum hemp of active cannabinoids. Ned's full spectrum hemp oil nourishes the body's endocannabinoid system to offer functional support for stress, sleep, inflammation, and balance. These products are science-backed, nature-based solutions that offer an alternative to prescription and over-the-counter drugs. All of Ned's full spectrum hemp oil is extracted from USDA certified organic hemp plants grown by an independent farmer named Jonathan in Colorado. I'm obviously a big fan, but don't take just my word for it. Ned CBD products have over 2,000 five-star reviews, and they work with incredible partners in the medical field like Dr. Caroline Leaf, Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and Dr. Will Cole. Ned is providing Holistic Fitness podcast listeners a very special discount. If you'd like to give Ned a try, listeners get 15% off Ned products with the code Lori Lee, LORILEE. Thanks, Ned, for sponsoring the show and offering a natural remedy to bring balance to so many people's well-being.
It's still a profit driven company, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, that's very cynical of me, and I should probably more focus on, what we can do.
well, yeah, but you're saying the point of why it's bad. It's this almost medieval type of thinking, which makes sense. It's rational. You get sick, we heal you. Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's worked for us for a long time. But now we have the science, technology, and I'm hoping, through podcasts, the book, blogs, that through that, some rational thinking will start, and we can start applying
prevent things.
Right. It's like, hey, if I go to the gym 3 times a week, I start eating healthy, and I try to go to bed at a decent time. You don't think your life's going to change? Get drastically better.
And on so many markers, like,
right.
If I miss a week of training, let's say I go on vacation, which I did recently, went to Mexico, went on vacation, drank a ton of alcohol, ate moderately well, ate pretty well while I was there, but my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability, and even like the amount of calories that I expended, all were negatively impacted. My resting heart rate shot up, my heart rate variability went down, and that's just like a week without training, get straight back into training again. My regular health markers are incredible. It's wild what eating well most of the time, sleeping well, sleeping regularly, and moving often will do for your body, regardless of what you look like.
Exactly. And then you start adding the mental things like, hey, why don't you just listen to a podcast for 10 minutes on the way down?
Right.
Do an audio book, and hey, now we're getting past the physical, because even with the genetic test, we can see your propensity for fear and anxiety, your optimism levels, depression, and if we see that through family history, through your history, through environment or epigenetics, and we can provide a better plan for someone up front. I mean, think about kids going into D1 football from high school to college, right? Knowing this information ahead of time, it's like, hey, this kid's going to be under a lot of pressure. He's got fear and anxiety as a high predisposition. He's got his optimism is low and his depression is high, and he's coming from a poor background.
Yeah.
So what can we do all around? Not just, make sure he's working out, make sure he's eating right, but what can we help to do mentally to make sure that this kid succeeds?
Yeah, that makes total sense, because then within the regimen, you can schedule or prescribe meditation, gratitude journaling, and stuff like that for a more holistic program. That's so cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's again, like it's all about learning actually holistically how we're made up and how we should be moving and grooving, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that. Let's chat regimen, because I feel as
Yeah.
though like people would like to do the meditation, people would like to go to gym, but it's really hard to prioritize it within your day. So how do you help people prioritize these things that we quote unquote should be doing?
The first thing is planning an organization, right? Yeah. And the thing is like, hey, every time I got a client and they say they can't fit something in, I'm like, that's fine. Like, well, we go ahead and we're going to write down your entire day. Right. And it's a great exercise, you know, do it for 1 to 3 days of your day and write down everything you do from waking up to go to sleep. Like, hey, this is when I woke up, and how you're feeling. Like, hey, I was feeling like crap. And exactly what you ate, exactly, you know, what you were doing, you know, and then I go through it with them. It's like, well, why don't we put your protein shake in the car? We'll bake it the night before and start showing people the way, because what happens is people are so comfortable with their regimen they're already having. Any change to it is scary. It seems insurmountable. It's like, I'll never be able to do that. And it's until you put it down and start seeing the places that you're faulting, can you make those changes?
Yeah. Scrolled on the couch for 2 hours.
Exactly.
Just building that awareness.
I was on TikTok for 4 hours before I went to bed.
Dang.
It's like, yeah, everyone's going to have some time here or there. It's
100%.
It's going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. But actually writing it out and coming up with a plan. It's like, all right, well, if let's say you don't have someone, so you can't afford someone to work with. It's like, if you want this, if you want to change your life, write this down and make those decisions. Like, hey, you know, I take the kids from school to work here, or school to their aftercare program. This is when I can get my gym time in. It might only be 30 minutes, but I can make a little sandwich in the car too. So I have some good food or what have you, and start making these little decisions, because these little decisions are investments that you start changing, compound after a while, and turn into lifestyle changes.
100%. No. And it's so funny because I'm not sure if you're aware, but I sell a goal getting journal. Actually, you probably heard it from the previous podcast you've listened to. And that's one of the parts of it. It's planning out every hour of the day. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can plan out every hour of the day and then highlight what you didn't do, or you can do the other thing. And I actually recommend observation in any area of life. Like some people are very against like calorie counting in MyFitnessPal. I'm not, because I'm like, don't change anything and just write down exactly what you did without judgment. And you'll see, like, there's nothing like that personal accountability of writing it down or logging it. And then you're like, oh, geez, yeah, I did have 3 beers and that came up to 600 calories. Do I want that there, or do I want to save it for another time? You know?
Yeah, 100%. It's you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could tell someone all day you're eating unhealthy or whatnot, but they, like you said, it's self-acceptance. They have to accept that fact of themselves that they are unhealthy. And without qualitative research, like you said, observing and writing things down, without blood work, without, you know, your BMI, without all these other things, that people are going to have a hard time doing that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious about your thoughts on BMI. I guess I don't know your clientele. I've had some guests that are very anti-BMI, some guests that are very pro-BMI. I'm in the it depends category. I'm curious about your thoughts because you mentioned it.
So for me, it's one part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Right. Like if your BMI is 44% or something like that crazy, it's like, all right, well, we obviously got a problem. I see your body composition, your fat's up, your is down. It's just, again, just like genetics, it's just one portion of it. For me, like, you know, getting into, you know, part of the portion of BMI, like I try to stay away from weight as much as possible, the number weight, because it's not a solid qualitative approach to health. Right. You talk genetically, someone who's 200 pounds and 5'2" versus someone who's 6 foot and 200 pounds, they're going to be drastically different for body composition. Right. Yeah. So we have that. Weight can't be the only factor we use for measurement. And that's why, you know, BMI is great. It's a tool, but I want to see your blood work, you know, like I want to see your genetics. I want to see your biomechanical assessment. I want to see your family history. I want to see your history. And then I can come up with a better idea of like how to approach things. You know, it's like, you know, a lot of personal trainers, and I'm not trying to shit on all of them. Right. But we'll just take your generic personal trainers. If they don't have this information, they can't help that way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's my pet peeve. I'm like very balanced. So it's my pet peeve when there's BMI doesn't work at all. It doesn't work. But it's when you're obviously overweight, it does work. But if you're obviously extremely fit, it does not work. So for me, that's why it's so in the middle. But then if you're obviously looking extremely fit, that doesn't mean your labs check out and stuff like that. If you look really, really fit, but you're still tired every day, there's something going on.
It happens more than not too. It's like, hey, like I work out, I eat well, and then you break down how they're working out. They're working out like 3 hours a day. They're eating sporadically. They're only getting like 1,200 calories, and you're like, well, that's your problem. It's like you don't have that accountability. It's like, hey, like it's almost like taking what is it? Too much of a good thing's a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. And 1,200 calories if you're training for 2 to 3 hours isn't going to be enough. Like, no. I'd be tired.
No, not at all. And yeah, going on that too, it's like, is calories enough? If you have that fat burning variant and, your calories in, calories out's not quite the same as somebody else, is that a good qualitative approach to the way we look at it? It's like, it's just like, hey, can we start talking about the other factors that go into health?
100%. There's always nuance. Yeah, I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast today. I've personally learned quite a bit about genetics. You provided me with more perspective, which I'll definitely be diving into. I like to end podcasts with, create your own question. What have we not spoken about that you feel as though the audience needs to rehear, or either rehear, like something we already had talked about, or something we haven't talked about that you want to share?
I think that it's time for us to start having a responsibility to take care of ourselves. And that's from a place of love, talking to people, because if you can't take care of yourself, if something does happen to a loved one, you'd be screwed. A quick story. Last year, I was in the hospital after taking care of my mom because I put so much time in to take care of her. I couldn't take care of myself. And, put that forward, whether that's selfishly, you're sitting on the couch, not wanting to work out, or you're overdoing it because you think that's the right thing. It's about perspective and being responsible. We owe that to ourselves, to our family and our community. We have, kind of lost vision in how powerful ethics and community can be in our environment. And, I'm hoping to, people wake up a little bit. We start, providing more communal base for, the youth sports. We provide more help for the poverty stricken, just help everyday people and all the way up to athletes. I just hope that we wake up for that responsibility.
What do you think the impact is of us not being as community driven as we used to be?
No community, no communication. Right. And I think that's the key word there is we're spending more time fighting over the internet than trying to learn each other's differences and learning where someone's coming from perspectively. It's really, we just have a huge perspective problem, right? Because we can't walk in somebody else's shoes. We decide to hate instead of understand. We decide to make up our own opinions instead of educating ourselves. It's just a perspective issue that I hope that we can come together as a community and fix.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We could have a whole other conversation on this because you really you really struck a chord with me there. To me, it boils down to a lack of empathy. We just want to, and it's not all of us, because I meet so many people day to day. I think people are kind of one-on-one at the surface level, right, but in groups, not so much. And we're just so quick, and especially behind the keyboard, to insert our opinion. We're waiting for the next time to speak rather than trying to truly understand the other person on the other end. Especially if it's a really horrendous action, like this person is being outright rude or something.
Right.
Why are they being rude? Has somebody just died in their life? I don't think anyone wakes up and says, I'm going to make everyone else have a really shit day. I'm just going to be such a bitch to everyone. Most people are pretty good and don't set out with that intention.
I agree. And, it's also the environment that we live in. You know, we're not taught patience. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We put up a post on social media, we get instant gratification. We send a text message, instant gratification. We're losing discipline and respect in communities, and that's where it starts. You know, we're not learning like we should be, more hands-on from our parents. We're not learning from our neighbors as much anymore, and we forget that, like, back when we had villages, we depended on our neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, we depended on, it's like, hey, like, my family just died. Like, everyone, I'm the only one left. It's like, they would take you in. You know, you don't see that anymore. It's like, hey, some kids going to Child Protective Services, or, you know, or the kids left on the streets. It's just like, like you said, where's the empathy?
Yeah. And where do we even start to solve that as well? And I honestly believe it's what you said earlier. It's that relationship with ourselves, because as you said, like, people have no patience. I just thought, I have no patience with myself. I want everything yesterday. And it's not that I'm impatient with others. I sometimes I probably am, but if you can't be patient with yourself, how can you be patient towards others? So I really think, like, a lot of those actions we kind of do externally is more of a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves.
I 100% agree. Change starts with self. Right? It starts with self. If someone really wants to make change, they need to live it. You know, hypocrisy is a killer of dreams. You know, right?
So true.
There's nothing more deflating than seeing, like, you know, some anti-smoking guy, you know, on the back of a trailer lighting up. You know,
yeah, for sure.
It's deflating. So we want to make sure that, like, we're just, you know, trying to live better for our neighbor, trying to live better for our family, trying to live better for our loved ones. And, you know, it starts with self.
Yeah.
And, you know,
you're not wrong. Tripp, I've loved this conversation. We've just spoken on so many different topics. Really love your mind. Really love the way you work as well. Like, you're just like, okay, here's the quantitative. How can I add the qualitative aspects to things with different types of reports and stuff like that? I think it's really amazing what you're doing, and I'm sure many others would love your approach. So how can we get in touch with you, listen to your podcast, learn about your services?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been an amazing talk. Hopefully I'll have you on my podcast one day here soon too.
Yay.
But yeah, it's the podcast is called Health or High Water. It's on any my God, I'm so tired. Any
podcasting platform.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all right. We can finish each other's sentences now.
Oh, thank you so much. You saved my butt. We also have the blog on ascendperformancetraining.com. You can find a little more information about our processes and how we work. I also have health profiling. That book's on Kindle and Amazon. There is a digital copy for $9.99 and a hard copy for $20. Then you could also see us in Denver too. If you guys want to come down face to face, we're at 1472 Jersey Street, Denver, 80220. You could also reach out me at trippascendpt@gmail.com if you guys have any questions. Anyone out there that is financially struggling, I'd love to send you guys a free program. You know, anything I can do to help. And then, yeah, I think that's about it.
Awesome. No, we'll definitely pop that all in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. And yeah, no, really appreciate you sharing your information today and joining us on the Holistic Fitness Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
No worries. And for everyone listening at home, whether you're in the car, cleaning the home, whatever you're up to, eat well, move well, breathe well. And until next time, keep shining.